Hi, my name is Karen Slusher, and these are my interviews with the various special education people in my building. I interviewed Jim Rome, who's an assistant principal, Dot Bose, who's been a special education teacher for almost 40 years, and Brooke Hogue, who's one of our paraprofessionals. As far as our child find procedures, we really don't encounter a ton of it just because so much is done at an earlier stage within our district. Our assistant principal kind of just made sure that I understood that a lot of it really is the early stages in our district and that we try to get students identified as quickly as we possibly can. Our special education teacher, though, said because she works with autistic and Asperger's students that one of the things that she pays attention to are social cues, lack of production within a classroom, and then a high test score. So kids who are really high performing in specific areas, but really just not showing the success in a classroom. And the paraprofessional really just didn't have much insight as to how we do this at our school. The most challenging part of the job for my assistant principal is just making sure that everybody's following the procedures necessary. We went through kind of a recent overhaul within our special education department, and it was really focused on making sure that everybody was operating under the same procedures, under the same expectations, and that all of our students were getting the same level of education, no matter who the teacher or the case manager is. For our special education teacher, her biggest frustration is really just making sure that the administration understands the various aspects involved in special education. So knowing what's going on in the classroom, knowing the historical component between a teacher working with a student all through his 4 years at the school, knowing how the department is working together, and just knowing the constraints they have on their time because of the communication required within their job. The paraprofessional said that her biggest frustrations are when the classroom teacher is not providing the appropriate accommodations and having to approach that teacher and to essentially call them out for not doing their job properly. That's the most frustrating and challenging part for her. Jim said that the biggest reward for him is just watching the whole team come together to see the success. We have a student at our school who's a junior this year who really is very capable, very able, and has kind of big dreams. And I think over the last couple of years, it's been a combination of teachers, support systems, administration, and the coaches to actually get this kid to recognize that he can definitely be a part of the team. So he's been able to be a part of our football team at the school, and that was one of Jim's favorite moments. For Dot, it's really just being able to see a student achieve his or her dream. One in particular that she mentioned, he graduated a few years ago, but he's currently at Emory-Riddle right now, getting his pilot's license and just really working towards being able to be a commercial pilot and accomplish that dream of just always being in the air. For Brooke, she said that it's watching a student overcome an obstacle, and her most memorable moment was more when she was a high school student working in our special needs department before she became a para, and she helped one of our students who is wheelchair bound actually get the muscle capacity built for graduation for him to be able to walk across the stage at graduation, and that was really her favorite moment that she's had in our special ed department. The advice that our assistant principal had for overseeing special education staff is to be willing to challenge the special education staff ideals and the methods in which they go about doing it. Not their understanding of the students, not their understanding of the laws, but just being willing to challenge their methods in terms of working together and accommodating our students' needs. Our special education teacher said that it's really important to make sure that as an administrator, I understand the history a teacher has with a student and with the family, and that is really something to honor and to make sure that we are paying attention to. So if we have to make changes, that we understand what the implications might be for everyone involved. And then for the paraprofessional, her heart, I think, is in the best place, is that she said that it's just really important that no matter what it is that I'm doing or what I'm challenging people to do, that I'm doing it because it's in the best interest of the student and not because it's for me or for the special education teacher, but because it's for the student. In terms of working effectively with the parent, the assistant principal said that communication is key. He made a very political response in terms of that, but just making sure that we are constantly communicating when we need to communicate and that we are communicating effectively. For our special needs teacher, she said that it's really important to understand where the parents are coming from when they enter the conversation, and just knowing what it is that they have that they can offer to help us better address the needs of a specific student. And I'll talk about that one a little bit later. for the paraprofessional, she said that it's important to know what it is that the parent is hoping to get for that student. So what is that parent thinking that the student can accomplish? What support systems do we need to put in place to make sure that that student is going to get to that place? When working with the regular ed teachers, the administrator said that it's really important to make sure that they are getting into the classroom with the regular ed teacher when he or she has students with special needs, because it's important to see how they are interacting with those students to make sure that they're addressing the needs, the accommodations that are on the IEP or on the 504, and just making sure that they are engaging those students as well. Dot said that it's really important to communicate on unusual circumstances. And she had a specific student a couple years ago who really was one of the quietest, shyest kids that she had ever seen, but the girl was just incredibly gifted, incredibly talented, and so she would talk to the parent just in terms of how do we really make sure that that girl feels supported. And the parents actually gave the recommendation that to let the regular ed teachers know that if this girl ever raises her hand, that they need to do their best to call on her. And I know in the classes where that happened, Dot said that they saw an extreme difference in terms of the girl, in terms of how she engaged with the other students, in terms of her ability to succeed in there. And so I think it's important for the special education teacher to really function as that go-between. But that her job really is just to make sure that she can communicate what's going to make the biggest difference. And then the paraprofessional said that her biggest role is just to make sure that you can call out the regular ed teacher when there's a need for change. And so that's really important for the success of everyone involved, is that to address something and not necessarily in a negative way, but just to make sure that the teachers is fully aware that something needs to be done differently. Advice that my assistant principal had for a first-year administrator is to just do the best that you can to understand the processes. Use the special education coordinator as a resource. So if you have questions about something that's going on or that you need to be involved in, that the special education coordinator really is going to be your first go-to in terms of understanding that. Dot said that the biggest thing is just to make sure that you're a support system. Understand what it is that the special education teachers need, understand what the special education students need, and really just support them in everything that they do. Get into those classrooms, get into the programs that they do. We have a couple of clubs at our school, and it always is a difference maker when, she said, when the teachers are able or the administrators are able to be at those things. And then Brooke said that it's important just to get involved with the special needs program. They offered various things at our school, and she said it's important to take advantage of those, not necessarily every single time, but to make sure that you're seen as somebody who's going to support the things that they do. The role of the special education teacher and the principal, so the interactions between the two, the assistant principal said that it really has to be a partnership, and the two have to work together in order to understand how to best serve one another, and so the communication component has to be there. And the special education teacher pretty much echoed the same exact thing. She said that trust has to be established between both, and that they really have to make sure that they're trying not to break it. And it's often hard to communicate some of those things, she said, and so it's really important to be able to see some of it, but to also be able to ask questions about what they do so that you have a better understanding when you interact together. Brooke really enforced that the principal has to trust the special education teacher. That one of the biggest things that we've seen recently at our school, she said, is that the administration has kind of questioned whether or not the special education teachers are providing what they need, when really it's just a matter of the administration not necessarily knowing exactly what the special education teachers are doing. And so she was saying that, and I think it was kind of an interesting thing from her unique perspective, is that the special education teacher, though, also has to recognize when they're just being challenged to do a better job and not doubted in their ability, but just simply challenged. And I think that was actually a really interesting thing to recognize, because I think for me it's a matter of knowing whether or not I'm challenging them or whether it's coming across as telling somebody that they have to make a change. Characteristics they want to see in aspiring administrators. my assistant principals just said, to understand the law, to know what the current practices are, and to know how to create an integrated environment. Our school has been really good about creating scenarios or situations where our special needs students are able to be in a regular education environment, and that it's really important to continually support those things. So we have special needs students in regular English classes, math classes, social studies, science. They're in our art classes, they're in our dance performances, and so they really are a part of the school. I think he's really proud of too. He said that the student body as a whole is good about involving students in the special education program and being connected to them. And I think he said that knowing how to enhance that environment is really, really important in making the school community stronger. Dot said that you really have to be prepared to support the program. They get a lot of flack, she said, for not being the high-performing students and the students who aren't going to be applying for the Ivy League schools or getting the big scholarships, but that those students make a significant difference in more than just the academics. And so being willing to support those programs, she said, was an essential. And then Brooke said it's important to make sure that you're connected to that part of the community. She made a comment that our administration hasn't been great about getting out to watch our unified teams, either basketball or our cheer team or our track team compete, and that she said it's different though when she sees the administrators there, the parents light up, the kids get excited, and it just makes a difference to be connected to that part of the community. My reflection with this is that I knew I was going to be talking to three very passionate people. They really wanted to share their stories about those students, and they cared deeply about providing support. I knew I was going to see three people who are very involved and very invested in the success of our special education department and our special education students. But what was interesting to me is that all three people really just identified the fact that they want support from one another and that they want communication to be strong, but that they might not always be communicating effectively with one another. And that was something that really kind of struck me as being a need to address. And I think the big thing is that they all think they're communicating effectively, but really they're missing a couple things here and there that they need to be able to share and work through with one another. They need to really continue to take the time to understand the needs of the families, understand the needs of the kids, and understand the laws. And I know for me, that's one of the big things that I am concerned about, just in terms of making sure that I stay up to speed on what is most recent, but something that I want to work towards doing. But my future role, I think I've been lucky. I've been able to be connected to the special education community within my school, and I would hope to be doing that if I continue into an administrator role. I really want to understand the students in special education. I want to understand the different needs that they have, and I want to understand how the teachers work to make those needs be met. I really want to be able to listen to the educator as a specialist, and I think one of my biggest concerns is that sometimes as an administrator you often forget that the person who is teaching a content really is the person who knows the most, and being willing to kind of listen to what it is that they're doing to make sure that you're making the greatest difference that you can make in the role that you have. Thank you.